Hey guys, just played a nice game where I had this position where I found a brilliant move for white. I'm going to show you how we ended up in this position and then ultimately what led me to play this brilliant move. We're going to just kind of talk about the thought process behind that move. Let's take a look. All right, so here we go. It was a 3-minute game. My opponent played the French, and international master playing the French probably knows a lot more about it than I do. It's not really an opening that I've had great success with, or success against, I should say. And so I decided to not play the main line and kind of mix it up. I tried to play a line that I teach in my Gambit course, B4, but my opponent played this move D4, which I don't believe I've really studied that, and so we're kind of already. I don't think either of us really knew what was going on and got to a really weird position. I just decided to push forward, take away the square from the knight. And again, some more weird moves. And I decided here, okay, this looks like a really nice square. So a lot of times, when you see pawns moving forward, what you have to remember is that they always create weaknesses on squares that they can no longer defend. Okay, so when you look at like this square on c4, because the d5 pawn has been pushed forward, and I have this guy kind of blockaded, at least temporarily, this is a really nice square for my knight where it's not going to be attacked by pawns, right? Also, from here, I'm attacking this guy, which has no support. And there's this square on d6, which is looking like it could potentially be pretty nice as well. So that's why I played knight to a3, planning to relocate the knight here to c4, just look like a really good square for the knight. So knight to a3, knight to c4. And then, I was thinking about developing this bishop, but I'm like, okay, I could go to e2. It's defending the knight, but other than that, it's not really doing much. I could go to d3. Maybe that's a better diagonal. But then I was like, you know what? This really looks like the best diagonal. Now, of course, black already has it covered, but I noticed that I was going to have time to actually fiend kettle and put the bishop over there. And so I said, okay, let's actually just take the time and put the bishop on a really nice diagonal. Okay, so bishop to g2. So here we go. Bishop is on a pretty good square. This knight looks pretty good. And I'm feeling okay about my position. It's still, pretty equal. Opponent plays f6, and I said, well, let's go ahead and castle. Actually, I traded and then castled. And I'm thinking about bringing my rook and trying to put pressure on black's king before black can consolidate and get castled. And we've seen this in many, many games. I've talked about this over and over again. If your opponent has not castled, and you have, put your rook on the open e-file and look for tactics, right? Like, super common, but a lot of people just don't do it, right? So here we go, rook to e1. So already I'm starting to think about, okay, this pawn is no longer defended by this guy. Now it's still defended here, so I can't, really take it, but start thinking about tactics. All right, so my opponent, sorry, I didn't mean to hit that button. So rook to e1. My opponent played knight e7, and here I had a brilliant move. So if you would like to pause, what do you think I played in this position? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, the move that I played was knight f takes e5, and it was a brilliant move. And let's talk about why I played this, because at first glance, it just looks like I'm losing a piece. Like, what are you doing, Nelson? You're trading a knight for a pawn, right? What's the idea? Well, the main point, and this is actually what happened in the game, my opponent did capture it. The main point is that I can capture here with my bishop, which looks like a trade, but there's this follow-up knight to d6 check fork. This is actually what happened in the game, and my opponent resigned. Okay, he resigned right here. So that's a very clever tactic that's kind of lurking in the position. And all I need to do to sort of set that up is move my knight out of the way. Even at the cost of giving up my knight, it's such a strong tactic that black can't really take this. If you imagine they took with the knight instead of the pawn, guess what? The same exact thing I'm going to take here, and then bam, I have the fork. And even if they don't take my bishop, well, I just got my piece back. I'm attacking the rook. I got that pawn for free, essentially. The game goes on, but I'm very happy with that, right? The other thing about this is that what if black would have taken here? Well, let's go back to this move again. When I played knight takes here, 3 things really happened, okay? Number 1, it unleashed the bishop to create that tactic, which I already talked about. Number 2, it sort of is opening up the king so that the rook is now involved on black's king. But number 3 is this queen move to h5. So now that brings me back to if they take here, they eliminate that threat, but they don't do anything about this one. And here we go. Queen to h5 check is a very powerful tactic. So this is one that I've seen many, many times over the years playing chess. When you have your knight on e5, your opponent's king is on e8, and you can play queen to h5 check. It's very, very powerful. Why? Because the knight is controlling those two squares where your opponent might be able to block the check. So if you imagine if there was a piece that could land here to block the check, you'd probably just take it because your knight is supporting. Or in this case, knight to g6 almost looks like a very nice move for black to block the check, except bam, my knight is ready to capture, and there's a pin here on the rook. In this case, it's even better for me because I also have a rook here, which I talked about as well. So you can see how everything is kind of fitting together to attack the king. And it happens so quickly, right? Like a couple moves ago, right here, it doesn't really look like there's any way to get to the king. But bam, like one powerful move just opens everything up. So this just kind of illustrates the dangers of not castling right away, and also the power of looking for these sacrifices to just open up the lines for your pieces, especially if there's a tactical reason why it works. You can't always just go sacrificing pieces, but in this case, I had the very clear follow-up, right, of the fork. And by the way, remember earlier I talked about this knight and that d6 square, and we see how it's coming into play even in this example. So wasn't really anything for my opponent to do. This is kind of just like a winning position for me after knight takes e5. So like I said, they did capture and just resigned after this. I guess they just missed the fork on d6. But really nice game. Quick game, but a very, very, nice tactic that you guys hopefully can learn something from. And I'll see you guys next time. As always, thanks for watching. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.